It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as Matt Hardy has his fingers crossed over a potential Jeff Hardy move to AEW, Bray Wyatt has teased an imminent return to wrestling, and Bryan Danielson vs Kenny Omega has been made official. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first... Last night's AEW Dynamite started out with a bang as CM Punk made his way out to the commentary table for the night, making a slight detour by jumping into the crowd and embracing many fans on the front row, including a Dusty Rhodes cosplayer. This was then instantly followed by Adam Cole's music, who received a huge pop from the crowd. Cole would then take on Frankie Kazarian in his first AEW match, coming away with the victory. He then took the mic to challenge Christian Cage and Jurassic Express to a match next Friday on AEW Rampage Grand Slam, with Cole teaming with his elite stable mates, the Young Bucks. This challenge would then be accepted later in the night during a backstage interview with Christian and friends, with Cage making reference to Adam Cole's NXT days. Christian would tell Cole that he's been dragged out of developmental thanks to his EVP friends, and that since he's used to losing Wednesday Night Wars, he'd better add Friday to that list. Also on the show, MJF and Brian Pillman Jr. would continue their feud after a fire segment last week, where MJF would cut deep into the Pillman family who were at ringside. After the promo last week on Brian's sister and auntie, MJF would this time turn to his father, Brian Pillman Sr., who of course passed away in 1997. MJF would first begin to talk up to the sky, but would quickly change his mind and start cutting a promo towards the floor, implying that he's not in heaven, but in hell. This was great heel stuff from MJF, and the late great Brian Pillman would no doubt have been applauding the heat-seeking heel. Pillman Jr.'s music would then hit, which led to MJF sending his heavy Wardlow up the ramp to stop him, but he'd run through the crowd with a chair instead, catching them off guard. However, MJF would of course manage to escape any danger. This feud has been great so far and has elevated Brian Pillman Jr. to a whole new level. He's gone from a rookie tag team guy to a top babyface in a matter of 2 segments. Elsewhere on last night's show, a number of top MMA fighters showed up to accompany American Top Team founder Dan Lambert. 4 different combat sport promotions were represented in the segment, with PFL's Kayla Harrison, UFC's Andrei Arlovsky, former UFC star Junior Dos Santos, Bellator's Austin Vanderford, and Bare Knuckle Fight Championship and former UFC fighter Paige Van Zandt all joining Lambert in the ring. Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page were also there, who have aligned with American Top Team over the past few weeks. Lambert would once again run down AEW before he was interrupted by Chris Jericho and another MMA fighter in Bellator, Jake Hager. Jericho would go on to say that he has a history of fighting MMA guys backstage, and referenced his real-life scuffles with Brock Lesnar and MMA-trained Bill Goldberg in WWE. A match would then be made for next week, as Jericho and Hager will take on Page and Sky at AEW Rampage Grand Slam, with Lambert insisting that the match takes place in a proper city and not New Jersey. CM Punk, who was on commentary for the night, also got involved in the show after being confronted by Taz and his son Hook. Punk would then square up to Hook, leading to an ambush from behind from Powerhouse Hobbs before he put Punk through the announce table. This is a continuation of last week's promo where Taz interrupted Punk, telling him to leave Team Taz's names out of his mouth. A match was then confirmed between CM Punk and Powerhouse Hobbs for next week on AEW Rampage, and this will be Punk's second match in the promotion. This seems to be setting up a series of matches for the Second City Saint, who will likely then wrestle Hook and Ricky Starks after this. Hobbs will no doubt offer a completely different challenge for Punk than Darby Allin, this time coming in as the smaller man. The match with Darby told a great story, with Punk using his size to overpower his smaller opponent, and it should be fun to see how the match will work the other way around. The show also saw the return of Cody Rhodes to AEW television, who has been away filming the newest series of the Go Big Show. The return took place during a Malakai Black segment, who had begun to approach Cody's fellow Go Big judge, Rosario Dawson, who was in the front row. She would then jump on Black's back, leading to Cody striking him, sparking a brawl in the crowd. This segment comes after weeks of Malakai Black running through Cody's Nightmare Family stable, starting with Cody himself at AEW Dynamite Homecoming, before going on to beat Brock Anderson, Lee Johnson, and Dustin Rhodes, making his AEW record 4-0 so so far. The two will meet next week at AEW Dynamite Grand Slam in the Arthur Ashe Stadium in a rematch from Homecoming, which lasted only 5 minutes. Next up, let's move away from Dynamite briefly as we go to an interview with AEW's Matt Hardy, who spoke on the Adam's Apple YouTube channel this week to discuss the growth of AEW. Hardy would go on to say that AEW President Tony Khan has done a great job of keeping his finger on the pulse of pro wrestling in 2021 and said, "Tony Khan is great. I think he's really on the pulse of pro wrestling in 2021, and he knows how to utilize everybody from top to bottom. They're keeping older guys, or veterans so to say, and utilizing them right while also building up talent. And wins and losses matter, and they're really taking a sports-centered approach that even I had to get used to." Matt was then asked a question that he no doubt gets all the time regarding his brother Jeff Hardy. Matt was asked if he thinks that his Hardy Boyz tag partner would ever join him in All Elite Wrestling, with Matt revealing that he's keeping his fingers crossed. This follows a recent interview where Matt would state that he hopes to end his career as a tag team with his brother. It was revealed last year that Jeff Hardy had signed a new deal with WWE, although given all the releases as of late, never say never. I think Jeff would likely prefer to join his brother in AEW over chasing around the 24/7 title on Raw, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. And speaking of potential signings for AEW, Bray Wyatt took to Twitter this week to tease an imminent appearance back inside a wrestling ring. Now going by his real name of Wyndham on social media, he would take to Twitter yesterday to reveal that his fans can expect to see him soon, when he replied to a fan who said, "I miss you, brother," which Wyndham replied, "Everything will be clear, I'll see you all very soon. Revenge is a confession of pain." He replied to another fan and said, "You've never seen the real me." It has been reported by the Wrestling Observer that Wyatt could potentially make his debut in AEW on September 29th in Rochester, New York on Dynamite, which just so happens to be the hometown of the late Brody Lee, Bray's former Wyatt family follower. However, this is before the day that his non-compete clause is expected to expire, which by my maths is the 29th of October 2021, which is 90 days after the day he was released on July 31st. There is a chance though that this has been shortened to allow him to work elsewhere sooner, with WWE perhaps counting his time away from television as part of the 90 days. It's also possible that he was released weeks before it was officially announced, but these situations are of course just speculation. Either way, the report states September 29th as a possibility, or even October 23rd at Impact Bound for Glory, depending on which path he chooses. My guess though is that AEW would be more appealing for him due to a larger audience and higher profile matchups. And finally, last night's AEW Dynamite led to the confirmation of one of the ultimate dream matches, as Bryan Danielson is set to take on Kenny Omega next week at the Arthur Ashe Stadium. Despite hesitation from his manager Don Callis, Omega eventually accepted Bryan's challenge for a non-title match. The two men have shared a ring 3 times in the past, with Omega failing to win any of them. They first met in a three-way match with Tyler Black, now known as Seth Rollins, as the third man, in a match that Bryan won. They then met once again in a three-way match, this time with Claudio Castagnoli, who is now known as Cesaro, walking away with the win. Both of those matches were in Ring of Honor in 2008 and 9. They would then meet one-on-one for the first time at PWG's 100th show, with Bryan coming away with the win. This match tops off a pay-per-view level set of tapings next week in front of AEW's biggest crowd to date at AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, which will then be followed by AEW Rampage the Grand Slam on Friday night. The Friday show will be pre-recorded and is being taped on the same night as Dynamite on the Wednesday. And before we go, let's take a look at the 8 matches that have been confirmed across the 2 shows, including Brian Pillman Jr. taking on Salt of the Earth MJF in what has become a very personal feud. Cody Rhodes will take on Malakai Black after his return to AEW television last night. It's also been confirmed that the AEW Women's Championship will be on the line as Casino Battle Royale winner Ruby Soho gets a shot at Britt Baker. FTR are set to battle Darby Allin and Sting, and this follows a post-match beatdown following Darby's win over FTR's Pinnacle teammate Shawn Spears last night. Adam Cole will wrestle for the second time in AEW as he teams with the Young Bucks to take on Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express in trios action. That will be on Rampage. And as mentioned earlier, Chris Jericho and Jake Hager of the Inner Circle will fight Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. And CM Punk will make his AEW television in-ring debut as he comes up against Powerhouse Hobbs of Team Taz. Both of those matches will go down on Rampage, airing next Friday night. And make sure you stay tuned to the channel for all the latest AEW news as we head towards the biggest week of AEW television in history, and of course, the Ultimate Dream Match. And before you go, why not check out my video where I discuss 10 wrestlers that would be perfect members of the Elite.